Jaya Radha Madhava Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purusharacharya Ashtottara Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purusharacharya Ashtottara Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, just give me a second here because I left something at home. Narayam Namaskritya Narang Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil. And loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 24th day of October 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 1, the history of the life of Ajamil, text number 49. Okay. Yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritis tatha yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritis tatha yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritis tatha yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritis tatha. Go ahead. Yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritis tatha. Yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritis tatha. Govardhan. Yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam nashta janma smritis tatha. Tyler, you want to try?
Yatagyas tamasā yukta
Yatagyas tamasā yukta
upaste vyaktam evahi
upaste vyaktam evahi
naveda purvam aparam
naveda purvam aparam
nashta janma smritis tatha.
nashta janma smritis tatha. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yatagyas tamasā yukta upaste vyaktam evahi naveda purvam aparam Nasta janma smatistata. Yatagyas tamasā yukta. Upaste vyaktame vihi. Naveda purvam aparam. Nasta janma smatistata. Yata. Just as. Ajaḥ. An ignorant living being. Tamasā. In sleep. Yuktaha. Engaged. Upaste. Acts according to. Vyaktam. A body manifested in a dream. Eva. Certainly. He. Indeed. Naveda. Does not know. Purvam. The past body. Aparam. The next body. Nashta. Lost. Janma smritihi. The remembrance of birth. Tata. Similarly. Translation. As a sleeping person acts according to the body manifested in his dreams and accepts it to be himself, so one identifies with his present body, which he acquired because of his past religious or irreligious actions, and is unable to know his past or future lives. Purport. A man engages in sinful activities because he does not know what he did in his past life to get his present materially conditioned body, which is subjected to the threefold miseries. As stated by Shabdev in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.4, Nunam pramatta kurate vikarma. A human being who is mad after sense gratification does not hesitate to act sinfully. Yadindriya pritaya apranoti. He performs sinful actions simply for sense gratification. Nasadu manye. This is not good. Yata atmanoyam asanhapi kleshada asadeyaha. Because of such sinful actions, one receives another body in which to suffer as he is suffering in his present body because of his past sinful activities. It should be understood that a person who does not have Vedic knowledge always acts in ignorance of what he has done in the past, what he is doing at the present, and how he will suffer in the future. He is completely in darkness. Therefore, the Vedic junction is tamasī mā. Don't remain in darkness. Jyotirgama. Try to go to the light. The light or illumination is Vedic knowledge, which one can understand when he is elevated to the mode of goodness, or when he transcends the mode of goodness by engaging in devotional service to the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. This is described in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. I'll say, you say. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tatagaro tasyaite katitayartha prakashante mahatmanaha. Unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. The Vedas enjoin tad vijñānatam sagurum me eva bigachet. What is it? Mundaka Upanishad 1-12. All I have is MU here. One must approach a spiritual master who has full knowledge of the Vedas and be faithfully directed by him in order to become a devotee of the Lord. Then the knowledge of the Vedas will be revealed. When the Vedic knowledge is revealed, one need no longer remain in the darkness of material nature. According to his association with the material modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, a living entity gets a particular type of body. The example of one who associates with the modes of goodness is a qualified Brahman. Such a Brahman knows past, present, and future because he consults the Vedic literature and sees through the eyes of Shastra Chakshu. He can understand what his past life was, why he is in the present body, and how he can obtain liberation from the clutches of Maya and not accept another material body. This is all possible when one is situated in the mode of goodness. Generally, however, the living entities are engrossed in the modes of passion and ignorance. In any case, one receives an inferior or superior body at the discretion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, As stated in the previous verse, Manasaiva Pure Deva Purva Rupam Vipashyati. Anumimangsyate Purvam Manasa Bhagavān ajaḥ. Everything depends on Bhagavān, or ajaḥ, the unborn. Why doesn't one please Bhagavān to receive a better body? The answer is ajñas tamasā. It's from this verse, right? Yeah. Because of gross ignorance. One who is in complete darkness cannot know what his past life was or what his next life will be. He's simply interested in his present body. Even though he has a human body, a person in the mode of ignorance and interested only in his present body is like an animal. For an animal, being covered by ignorance, thinks that the ultimate goal of life and happiness is to eat as much as possible. A human being must be educated to understand his past life and how he can endeavor for a better life in the future. There is even a book called the Bhrigu Samhita, which reveals information about one's past, present, and future lives according to astrological calculations. Somehow or other, one must be enlightened about his past, present, and future. One who is interested only in his present body and who tries to enjoy his senses to the fullest extent is understood to be engrossed in the mode of ignorance. His future is very, very dark. Indeed, the future is always dark for one who is grossly covered by ignorance. Especially in this age, human society is covered by the mode of ignorance, and therefore everyone thinks his present body to be everything without consideration of the past or future. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatammena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So what could be a more appropriate verse for this verse than Om Jnana Timirandasya? It's exactly pertinent. So, this is quite a verse in purport, which we'll review now. And the first thing is this analogy to dream world, dream life. Prabhupada was preaching that from the beginning. He would refer to that we want to try to believe in, we have to understand the reality of the previous life, present life, and future life, even though we forget our previous life. So the analogy is a dream is very good, because when you dream something, you might have a very vivid dream. It might be a pleasant dream, it might be a frightening dream. But in that dream world, you're taking it as reality. And you can even start sweating. If it's a nightmare, you can sweat, you can wake up screaming, And then you say, oh, thank God it was only a dream. If it was a very pleasant dream, it says, oh, I wish I could go back to sleep and get back in that dream. But one way or another, it's a real experience. But then you get up and you say, okay, it was just a dream, and then you get into your daily life, whatever it may be. But the fact is, and Prabhupada made this point again and again, as in this purport, that our present life, or what we call our real life, in your waking life, has the same quality as the dream life, because it is caused. You're in a certain situation in your daily life because of what you did and the record in your subtle body. In other words, you've gotten this body, whatever it may be, a human body, because of just according to the nature of your subtle body at the time of death. That's the philosophy. You read it in the 15th chapter at the beginning. Krishna very nicely explains this. After the verse, Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manakshishtan Indriya Pakadistani Karshiti, that all these living entities in the world, in the universe, are eternally my parts and parcels. In other words, no one can become God. This is our eternal nature, our Sarup, infinitesimal particle of spirit. But because we're part and parcel of Krishna, we have his same qualities. That means we have a form, we have a personality, we have senses and everything. But those spiritual, eternal senses of ours have been covered by the gross and subtle body, because we rebelled against Krishna, we turned away from Krishna. So how do we go from body to body? So he says 6 senses, which include the mind. So then it's explained how the subtle body, the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego, they don't die when the gross body dies. And during a lifetime, you're experiencing so many things. You're doing things in relation to the modes of nature. You're establishing desires and fears and all of these things. And they're all recorded in your subtle body, in the mind. And so that forms the template of your next body. And he even has this verse, Shrotram chakshu sparshanamcha rasanam granam evacha adhishtaya manashtaya vishayanupasevate. After transmigrating into a human body or a subhuman body or sometimes a superhuman body, but it's some other body with senses, you get a certain eye, ear, nose, and all the other senses grouped around the mind. And then this phrase, vishayanupasevate, is very telling. I remember looking that word up, upasevate. I forget in what context, in my work I have Sanskrit dictionary also. And I saw that, Prabhupada says, and you engage in these senses in the translation, something like that, with the sense objects. But one of the meanings of upasevate is to be addicted to. Be addicted to. If you get Prabhupada's favorite example, you may get a hog's body. You have no discrimination of eating, out of ignorance. That's the theme of this. Out of ignorance, you just think, this is my life. I don't have any previous life or future life. It's all surrounding this particular body, So then in order to enjoy, you do all kinds of things. And especially because of ignorance. There's no Vedic culture, no training. So, what a wonderful thing. Example of the supermarket. Supermarket, you have so many aisles, just snacks. You go down to Ralph's here, it's just snacks, the Doritos and offshoots of Doritos and everything. Who could resist that? This is scientifically engineered to give you a certain taste, feel, and a fragrance, and artificial chemicals, whatever, but it tastes like anything, and you become addicted. And before you know it, you finish one bag, you finish another bag, you're sitting in front of the TV. So that's exactly what happens. And all the senses can become attracted that way, become habituated, addicted to experiencing in a certain way. And because it's violating the laws of nature, the laws of God, you've paved a very dark path to the lower planets or lower species that way. Because there's no ignorance of the past life or the future life. Or no knowledge, excuse me. So that's why I came to thinking of my my little paean to Prabhupada that's posted on the back there. I don't know if you read it. It's a little poem. This I originally composed several years ago as an offering on Vyasa Puja. But then I tweaked it a little so it can be permanent on every day. And what is it? Exactly this. The Prabhupada has come to give enlightenment, to lighten up, to give the light of the Vedic knowledge of the Bhagavat tattva to this benighted age. The benighted age, it comes to America and then all over the world. So the poem goes like this. O Prabhupada, we hail the day when you appeared just like a ray of Krishna's vast effulgence bright to give this blind world back its sight. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts and pray with deepest love that we may serve your lotus feet in every circumstance we meet. As years go by and books go out, we see what life is all about. To serve your mission and our Lord's by spreading wide your sacred words. As well, you want us all to strive to let those words direct our lives. This safest path will lead us home, no more in Maya's realm to roam. So that was very pertinent to this purpose, so that's why I quote it. So let's go through this. So Prabhupada quotes from Lord Rishabhdev. Now, that was not so far back. We studied the teachings of Rishabhdev in the 5th canto, 5th chapter. Very, very famous. The first one, if I listen to Prabhupada lecture every day, and you get to the 5th canto, 5th chapter, text 1, there's about 12 different lectures. He was traveling around India. Wherever he stopped, he gave a lecture on that verse. That's a very important verse. So that verse, I won't go into details because his time is limited. But that verse, it's just like a spiritual master. Like Krishna, when he first starts speaking as a spiritual master to Arjuna rather than as a friend, he chastises him. He more or less calls him a fool, right? You're speaking learned words, but you're lamenting for what isn't worthy of grief. Only, pundits don't speak like that. I mean, in other words, you're a fool. And Prabhupada said, this is necessary sometimes. The spiritual master with strong words, he can cut out the sharp, the very deep-rooted attachments in the mind. There's a verse like that, maybe I'll cite it. So this one is verse 4 of his teachings, Nunam Pamatta Kurute Vikarma. And very memorable, Prabhupada quoted all the time. Here he quotes the whole verse and he goes line by line. Have you noticed that? He's giving translation. So what does he say? Nunam, certainly, Nunam Pamatta Kurute Vikarma Yadindriya Prite Apanoti. That those who live just for sense gratification, which is like 99.9% of the people. And don't forget that sense gratification is also subtle senses, because mind is one of the senses. So all of this entertainment, sitting stupefied before Netflix or whatever it may be, that's also pramattak. That's a symptom of madness, So, in the sense gratification. So those who simply live that way, performing vikarma. Vikarma means inevitably, if you have no reference to the Vedic knowledge and rules and regulations, you're going to perform abominable activity that's going to assure you, as he says here, of great suffering, as we learned in the end of the fifth canto after those hellish planets. Kurute vikarma yadindriya priti apanopi nasaru manye. He's giving this phrase means I don't think it's a very good idea. Nasaru means it means very good, but nasaru manye, my opinion is this is very bad. Nasaru manye yata atmano yam asannapi kleshadastade, because you're sure to get another temporary body and suffer like anything, So then he gives a verse which kind of summarizes the whole principle. Padavabas tavada bodha jato yavan jigyas saatma tattvam yavat kriyas tavadidam manora vai karmatmakam yena sharira bandha. Now just a little snippet of a Sanskrit instruction. When you see a word ending in ENA, it means it's instrumental. It means by which he's going to describe, by which you stay bound up to a body. So how do we stay bound up to a body? That's the rest of the verse. So parabhavas in this context means defeat. Defeat for the soul is taking another birth in a material body. Our mission in life are to win the game, so you're not defeated. And success, it means to escape from the bonds of birth and death, get liberation. That's a basic winning principle. So he says, Padabhabas tavad abodha jato. This defeat, birth and death, is caused by ignorance. Abodha is born out of ignorance. So that's the whole theme here, is that without knowledge, you're helpless. Your senses of this take you, to the darkness. So parabhavas tavada bodha jato yavana jigyasas atmatatvam. So accepting that out of ignorance, you're going to stay bound up, to birth and death and be defeated. So why? How does that ignorance, is it perpetuated? You're not curious. You're not inquisitive. Atma-tattvam, to the truth of the soul. Atma-tattvam is what we're studying here. The truth of the soul, the supreme soul relationship. You can define it that way. So, as long as you do not remain inquisitive about Brahman, the very first sutra of the Vedanta Sutta, atato brahma jigyasa. That jigyasa means, what are you inquisitive about? Because this is what it means to be a living entity. You're looking for something. And if you're lower species, you're looking for food. You're looking to get free of the danger. You're looking for sex. And after doing that for a while, you get tired and you sleep. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, right? But you're inquisitive, where is that safety? Just like I like to use examples of my evening walk. Sometimes I take a walk and it's dark, So I bring a flashlight. Why? Mostly so I don't crush any insects. The route that I go on there's a lot of crickets. Somehow there's a lot of crickets. So what is their strategy? Fight or flight. Well, their strategy is when because they probably sense me coming because I'm I'm like a big monster for them, right? And boom, boom, boom. So when the light comes, they freeze, because the predators, they're looking for movement, right? If there's a bird, so they freeze, which is great. I can just step over them, If they start leaping and jumping, they might jump under my feet. But it's pretty amazing. So that's, a big part of their life. Not getting eaten, not getting crushed, and then the rest of it is looking for food, and then, that. So that's all. They're also souls just like we are. The nature of the soul is the same. It's amazing to think like that. These plants, the trees, there's a soul in there. So how fortunate we are to have this human body, but if you don't have knowledge, you're wasted. You know. So, yavat kriyas, now how does it work? Yavat kriyas tabadidam manovai. As long as you do this kriya, and this kriya in this context means karmic activity, fruitive activity. Because in ignorance, that's what you're going to do. So your mind remains karmatmakam, means saturated with fruitive desires, and they include negative desires too, all kinds of ways that you can stay safe, you know, this and that, as well as positive, trying to enjoy. So that karmatmakam mind is what takes you to another physical body. It's all in the mind, you know. So then, then he gives a solution. You know? So he summarizes the beginning, and he says, Avidyatma nupadiyamani. I forget the last line. I didn't have it here. Yeah. Anyway, the last one is, the last line of the verse is, Pritir niyavan mai vasudeve namuchate dehi yogena tavat. Is that as long as you're in complete ignorance of this, you're sure to be bound up. So the real thing is, ultimately, if you can attain love for Vasudeva, Krishna, then you're out of the bondage of birth and death. Priti and niyavan, as long as you don't attain love for Vasudeva, Krishna, you will not be able to get free of birth and death. Then you may think, well, what about the yogis who become, you know, they realize the super soul? Or even those who merge into the Brahmajyoti, aren't they free? No, they're not. They only seem to be. Those who deny the personality of the Supreme and simply try to transcend the modes of nature and merge into Brahman, they think they're liberated if they're up there, but they're not really, because it's an unnatural situation. There's no bhakti, there's no ananda, there's simply knowledge. You know, I'm not this body, I'm pure spirit, I'm pure spirit, I'm pure spirit. How long can you go on chanting that? You know, that's the first thing I learned. You have to Hare Krishna. What is it? Aham brahmasmi. Remember you learned that? Yeah. Oh, that's eliminated. But you can't just chant aham brahmasmi, aham brahmasmi, aham brahmasmi. But that's what they're chanting up there. So they get bored and they come down. Aru padang tado anadvita yushmarangre, because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. So this is Rishabhadev's teaching. So Prabhupada quotes this famous phrase. I learned this before I even heard about the Hare Krishnas. I remember I learned this at Amala Bhakta Swami's ashram. He was then called Shiva Prem Swami, I think, back in 71, I think. Yeah, when I wanted to study yoga because I had a serious bout with hepatitis and my health was, you know, pretty weak. So instead of going to the gym, thank God, I was looking for yoga. By that time I was interested in Indian music, Indian thought, you know. So in those days, do you remember the yellow pages? Those are old enough. We had yellow pages. I looked it up, and the nearest one was in New York City at that time. So I went to Manhattan. And he was teaching us yoga, hatha yoga, which is good, but he also had a class in philosophy and this and that, you know. So one of the things was this famous phrase, which I probably forget now, asato ma sadgamaya, tamasi ma jyotirgamaya, mrityum ma amitam gamaya, something like that, right? So it says, there's two ways of understanding this. This word ma probably takes me not, which is perfectly, you know, don't stay in darkness, go to the light. Don't stay in the temporary world, asato, but come to the eternal life, eternity. Don't stay in the world of death, but come to amrita, which means ultimately deathlessness, which is quite a call, I think. Don't you learn that as a child? Did you learn that in India, Sureshwar? You never learned? Modern India. Anyway, so that was interesting. It was kind of thought-provoking. I didn't know quite what to do with it, but it was something, you know. So Prabhupada is quoting it here. And he takes the ma, can mean don't, rather than me. It's also a prayer to the Lord. Oh my dear Lord, don't leave me in darkness, take me to the light. Don't leave me in temporary, take me to the eternal, right? Like that. So it both means. So light means knowledge. Light means the illumination of Vedic knowledge, which one can understand when he's elevated to the mode of goodness, or when he transcends the mode of goodness by engaging in devotional service. So I wanted to just call attention to this one verse that's so appropriate here, that one of my favorites from the 13th chapter. Those who listen to my classes hear this verse again and again. Prabhupada would quote it often. Purushak pakatisto hi bhunkte pakati jangunan karanang gunasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. So what this verse says is that the Purusha, the living entity who is acting as the enjoyer, can be called the Purusha. By nature we're Prakriti, right? With the Tasta Shakti, we're the marginal energy of Krishna. But in our conditioned stage, we act like enjoyers and controllers. You know, he's a Purusha, he's the Uttama Purusha. So we're a little temporary, pretend Purusha. So that's why it's called Purusha here. So the enjoying living entity in material nature, Prakriti Stohi, Bhunkte Prakriti Jangunan. Now Bhunkte can mean enjoy, but it can also mean experience, because there's also suffering. So he experiences the three modes of material nature, the effects. And then, here's where our free will comes in. Karanang gunasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. That's exactly what this whole purport is about. As we associate with those modes of nature, that is the cause of our getting good or bad births, and getting, you know, lowly animal births, or at least a human birth like that. So that's where our free will comes in. But how are we going to exercise that free will? Only if we're informed, if we have some knowledge, we'll know what's good. Because if you just leave it up to the senses, then you're going to be in the modes of passion and ignorance. And you're going to have a very dark and future that's a lot of suffering. So the knowledge is the key. And that's, you know, this is why we have a Bhagavatam class, Prabhupada insisted. And why we're supposed to study the books and memorize verses, you know, and try to live according to these. Because we were so conditioned that if we just slack off a little bit, then this crazy Kali Yuga will take over. It's so powerful. I was just thinking of, you know, this whole thing this is part of the whole pastime of a Jamil getting delivered by chanting the holy name, you know, at the time of death. And so what was his situation? He was a Paka Brahmin. He had a, you know, very faithful wife. He was going out in the forest doing what he had done many times before, some menial service for his guru, you know, he was gathering firewood, which is a basic thing. And then he ran into this couple, you know, having sex in the forest, and he couldn't control the senses. He was seeing it, he was becoming agitated, and he lost it. And then he got attracted to the prostitute, married a prostitute. You know the whole story. So I was just thinking, what are we situated? What was our situation now? You know, I mean, when I grew up, you know, I was a normal kid, you know, you get to be 12, 13, he says, well, maybe we can steal one of those Playboy magazines, you know. Let's see, you distract them and we'll kick it up. That was it, you know, I mean, basically, and if you watch TV, there was a code. There was a code that you didn't see any pornography on TV, you know, it was all a code about what you could say, what you could show on there. It was. So now to fast forward a few decades, and you got the cell phones and everything. It's impossible. Without any training, without any knowledge, practically everybody is swept away by these lower modes of nature. It's very difficult to maintain even ordinary morality in this age, you're dead. You know, it's crazy. I mean, so how can people be delivered in this age? You know, they're not interested in these things and how to get the attention. So that's why the Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement is so important, because people, you know, are into dancing. You know, sometimes, you know, you go on Harinam. We used to go every Friday night for years and years and years. You remember? So you go out there, you know, and the first thing people pick up on is the drum. You know, the rhythm. Prabhupada once said, "This is a morning walk." I heard it. He asked, he's on the morning, what's the universal language? And many were saying, oh, music. I said, no, it's rhythm. Rhythm is even more basic, you know. And so people start dancing, you know, and while they may hang out a little bit, they're hearing more of the holy name, you know. It's rare that they'll chant, Now, when you have a power preach, just like in your Maharaj, you stop, you figure out how to, get people to chant, and that's all very good. And that was Prabhupada's first success. When he came downtown, uptown, he was there with somebody else's ashram, he made a few contacts, but it really wasn't happening. You read the Lilamrita. But when he came downtown, he had his own place, albeit on the Bowery, in a loft, But it was his own place, and he had his own program. It was chanting, a little talk, more chanting, and prasadam. That was the basic program. And who wasn't, it wasn't attracted to prasadam. And Prabhupada was a very expert cook, he trained, and so that was just by nature attractive. Even if you couldn't understand the philosophy, and you may have just, checked out the chanting like this. I don't know. You come back for the prasadam, and after a little while, it gets to you, and you yeah, all right, I'll clap along. That sounds pretty cool. So the chanting opens up the channel by which you become interested and receptive to the message, and it doesn't require anybody. It doesn't matter how sinful you are, as long as you have ears and a tongue, you can chant, and that's really how the movement spread and is spreading. And that was Lord Chaitanya's revolution, from top to bottom. Just chant. It doesn't matter whether you're a Brahmin, if you're a human being. Even though he went beyond human beings, he got the elephants and the tigers to chant, and they went through transformation. The deer were embracing the tigers in Jharkhand forest. Maybe you haven't heard of that pastime yet. You heard of it. So anyway, that's what this is all about, because they're talking about, and it's of course accurate. These Yamadutas, they know the normal philosophy, but there's kind of a special chance in this Kali Yuga, and that is if somehow or other you chant the name of Krishna, and he chanted without offense, then you eradicate all the sinful reactions. And Mama said, is that really fair? All the people who suffered, and is it like that? The thing is, Krishna's, he's taking care of everyone. And what happened, just like, okay, you find, Prabhupada was able to make a few devotees in 22nd Avenue. And they kept preaching after he left. And they're making new devotees. So it's almost like a positive disease. It's a pandemic, but you're catching Krishna consciousness, right? So much good is done if someone is okay. So they're delivered from their sinful reactions. Krishna's in charge of everything. Everybody's getting their just desserts. But here he's saying, oh, this person actually can develop love for me, and and they can do so much good in the world. And so he's willing to change it. That this age of Kali is an ocean of faults. Does anyone want to argue that? And it seems to be degrading very quickly. But there's Kali doshi nidera asti eko mahadguna kirtanadeva krishnasa mukta sangam param bhajet. That simply by kirtan of the holy name of Krishna, mukta sangha, this is a very interesting phrase for mukti. You get free from your attachments. You get free from those powerful attachments that have entered your mind and are completely obscuring your understanding of who you are, what God is, what the relationship is, and everything. So that mukta sangha param bhajet. And if you can really get free of all of those attachments and have that attachment transferred to Krishna, that's the only way to do it. Then param bhajet, you go back to Godhead. And this is a central verse to understand this age and this whole chapter. And when we get to the teachings of Yamaraj to his dutas, then so much he's describing the power of the holy name. So now this verse, it's talking about the mode of goodness, and we see, of course, that when one really takes Krishna consciousness seriously, then one sees the importance of the mode of goodness. So much in the ashram. So if you're really in a environment where there are other devotees and everyone's practicing, so much of it is keeping in the mode of goodness, and keeping the place clean and everything. I remember when I was living in the ashram, if you heard somebody raise their voice in anger, it was like that's completely out of what's going on is, that's not the mode of goodness. So there's that, that control. Whereas if you're outside, people are yelling and screaming all the time, especially these homeless people, these poor people. Talk about mode of ignorance and madness. You can see it on the street. And it's so dangerous when someone is in a state of mind, they don't know what reality is. You give them a wide berth, you never know what they're going to do. This is the world we live in. So this knowledge, which is so systematically and wonderfully presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and especially with Srila Prabhupada's commentary, without that, the commentary we can't understand. And this is such an important understanding. We can't just read the Bhagavatam without commentary. This verse, but has been cited recently. Tarko pratishta shrutiyo vibhinna nasa vrishya yasya matam nabinnam dharma sitattam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gata supanta. That tarko pratishta. This defeats the whole Western philosophy. I used to study Western philosophy, the Plato's, and we have a book that was produced. I remember producing this book. Prabhupada was so eager to have, defeat these Western philosophers. He had Shyamasundar and Hayagriva. They would read them, essence of the philosophy, and he would refute it. And many tapes were produced. But the book wasn't coming out for various reasons. And Rabindra Sarup, who has a degree in philosophy, he had a look at it. He went down to Miami before I got there. And his health was also weak at that time, but he was staying there for some months. And he came up, after reviewing the transcripts, he was saying, faulty questions, perfect answers. Meaning that they weren't presenting the essence of the philosophy to them. They were picking and choosing, jury picking things that they figured Prabhupada it was close enough or was relative to some point of philosophy. And so the point is that Rabindra Swarup said this will not be accepted very well in academia, in philosophy departments. So anyway, it was all of this held up, and eventually they published it in Vrindavan, outside of the BBT, the Dialectic Spiritualism book that came out, But we also published one, and at a certain point in BTG I was editing, and we'd use one of those conversations. I remember the one on Marx. This is amazing. It was so long, it was 2 parts in 1976, I think these came out mostly. And Prabhupada had spent 4 or 5 days there? He spent less than a week, I think, in Moscow. They didn't know what they would find. He describes when he came through the customs, they looked through his bag and they found a Bhagavad Gita. And they called over somebody, he says, and Prabhupada said, at that point, he said, now I'm finished. Because he knew, he said, they will send you to some unknown place, the Gulag or something, he says. So he waited, and said, by Krishna's grace, they looked through it, they said, it's not dangerous, they let him go in, But that's the situation at that time. High communism, 72 or whatever it was. So, Shyamasundar had to make a foray, for hours, just trying to find some fresh vegetables or fruits. It was all meat and potatoes and liquor. So he would go out, and it was one fellow. He would go out as a devotee, and dressed in it. So he was attracting some attention. So one fellow was interested, and so he talked to him, and then he invited him back. And he came up, and he spent hours with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada preached to him, and initiated him. He was the first Russian devotee, and then he started preaching. And eventually they smuggled, this is high communism, it was all illegal, smuggled in a Bhagavad Gita as it is. And people would copy it, they would translate it into Russian and copy it longhand, or they would type it out and then it would be a few carbon copies, and this way they were distributing books. And the whole yatra started that way. It was amazing. And people were so much thirsting for genuine spiritual knowledge because it was against the law, to be religious or whatever. But what did Prabhupada give? He gave his association. He gave real knowledge, and this verse is pertinent. It wasn't just some book that went in there. Prabhupada himself went in there, made a devotee, someone who's practicing. So tarko pratishta shruti vibhinna. Now you may say, well, I'm going to study the Vedas, but the Vedas differ. That's the whole point of this, of what we're reading here, is that if you just read the Vedas and the Manusamhita, you're going to be on the side of the Yamadutas. They're correct, you see. But when you get to the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatam ends. You know the last verse, Nama Sankirtanam. It starts with the verse Nama Sankirtan, the very last verse. Yeah. And throughout, there's so much about the holy name as is here. So that's the talk about Shruti Opabinda. They disagree. You just read the Vedas, you think, oh, I should worship, as Bhajan Raj mentioned, I should worship Indra, like that, Kali. The Devi Bhagavatam. There's a Devi Bhagavatam. You may not even know about it. You're lucky. I encountered it. It's not the same as the regular Bhagavatam. So they differ. The Shrutis differ if you don't have a guide. And then if you say the rishis, not as a spiritual master, but just learned people, they also differ. They have to differ with the other rishi in order to be recognized as a philosopher. This is true of Western philosophy, like anything. So how am I going to understand what Dharma is? I'm interested in practicing Dharma to attain the goal of life. Someone says, Dharma nihitam guhayam. It's hidden within the heart of the realized souls. Therefore, mahajano yena gata sapanta. The path is to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans, the great souls. And we have the grace of having Prabhupada's association every time we have Bhagavatam class, Bhagavad Gita class. You're all invited. We have one every night at 7:15, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so that's the key. And with that association of Prabhupada, and then he said, Tad Vigyanatam Sagunamay Vabhagachet, that again, Vigyanartam, if you want Vigyan, you have to have that as a goal. Then you have to go to the Guru. Then you have to go to the realized soul, coming in line and giving you the truth of the Khem. Why did Krishna speak the Bhagavad Gita? Because by the force of time, the knowledge as it is has become lost, isn't it? Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshi yavadu. I spoke it to the sun god, who spoke it to Vivasvan, Vivasvata Manu, who then spoke it to Ikshvaku, came down to human society. But by the force of time, the mahata, the great powerful force of time, the science as it is has been lost. So now I'm speaking it again to you. Krishna himself had to come at that time. So we're coming in line from Krishna. If you look at that back of the introduction, at the end of the introduction, you see the whole parampara starts with Krishna and come down to our realized soul. So we're getting the knowledge as it is. So as I mentioned, so how do we associate with the modes of nature? We, first of all, by cultivating the mode of goodness, and associated with the mode of pure goodness by the process of pure bhakti. When we're chanting in front of the deity, we're chanting our rounds, we're doing straight devotional service, it's beyond the mode of goodness. It's meant to be, the taste of pure goodness. And the name? What's the name of that pure goodness mode? Do you know? The Vasudev state. Vasudev, because in that mode, Vasudev appears. Just like Vasudev, Krishna appeared from Vasudev. So important to get the long and short A's right. So that's the state we're looking for, and that's the state that the great acharyas are in. And so they're communing at every moment with Krishna, and they can give us, the pure knowledge, the understanding. So I kind of went on over time as usual. Any questions, local? And we'll have a remote. Bhakta Saul.
That was a nice class, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just had a question. Are devotees subjugated to the mode of material nature? Like, can they be a devotee but in the mode of passion and ignorance? And if so, how
can. Yeah, you read in the third canto. You weren't here, but in Kapila Dev's teachings, he talks about bhakti, colored by the mode of ignorance or passion. So the thing is, it's not pure, and you can easily fall away from it. The point is, but it's like Krishna says, Chatur Badabhajante Mam, that even if there's 4 types of pious people who come to me, and these people, if you need some money, you may be in the mode of passion, but you're still approaching Krishna. And so then, what does he say? He says, they're all pious, but the best of all is the jnani, the one who is actually looking at it, really wants knowledge. And if you approach me in that mood, if you increase your knowledge, then after so many births, you'll attain knowledge and become a Mahatma, understanding that I am everything and surrender to me. It all ends in surrender. So yes, I mean, there's a spectrum. You know, there's bhakti that's materially motivated, but it's not really bhakti. It's just you're approaching Krishna, and if you're fortunate, then you'll graduate from that platform of bhakti. You know, if you surrender to a genuine spiritual master, then you'll come out of that. You'll be able to see, oh, I have to work on this and actually not desire anything material. So it does exist, and we see so many people, they do a little bhakti, and it's there, you know, but mainly their life is you know, involved in the modes of nature and dealing with the material energy. And so it's a struggle, and who knows? Previous life we may have done such kind of bhakti. You know, it's not pure. The material desires are still present, but then we get another chance. You know, don't forget, svopam. Even a little practice of this bhakti protects you from the greatest type of danger, which is losing the human form of life. So I got the human form of life. What do? You start from whatever percentage you ended at. So bhakti is very all-encompassing. Anyone who just chants once is like, you know, to speak of a jamil. Even if you don't chant purely, that's auspicious. You know, next birth you got to chant at least twice. You know, but why then? But then the question of why prolong the agony? Let's see if we can go back to God in this life, and then you require determination, patience, enthusiasm. You know, and so many instructions. So that's, yeah, they're all spectrums of bhakti, but we're striving for pure devotional service. Anya abhilashita shunyam, completely devoid of any other desire. That's what we're aiming for. Anything else local? Yes, Govardhan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class, Prabhu. So you mentioned, you know, numbing the brain with Netflix and stuff like that.
Yes.
So when you go out on book distribution, you know, people get a lot of questions, or people ask a lot of questions. So I met someone yesterday, and she said, "After this, what are you going to do?" You know, I told her, "I'm going to go back. I'm probably going to do some service, and then we'll have a nice program in the afternoon." And then she asked, what else do you guys do? And I said, we study scripture, we cook, you know, we play musical instruments. And then I told her, we don't have any TV. We don't have a TV in the ashram. And then she said, no TV? And then she said, she couldn't, you know, her mind couldn't handle the thought of, you know, no TV, no Netflix.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. You know, I have the internet. It's the spectrum thing now. You know that. Anyway, that's one of the local providers. So they think, well, now that we got him, you know, I mean, he's on the internet. You know, obviously he's going to get the TV app. You know, and this and that. So they keep sending me these little things. We have a special for you. You have a special for you. I could throw it away, because it's unheard of. You know, it's what? You know, that's. But it's not just that. You know, it's the thing with the internet and the phone. You know, I remember there's one lady. She was running a school. A devotee school, a gurukul for girls in Alachua, and then it closed up because I visited twice a year for at least 20 years, you know, because I was coming there as known. So I asked her, what happened? Why did you close it up? She said, well, the girls, they all got cell phones, and you know, they had the cell phone, and they were texting with some of the boys' ashram, you know, like that, and so. It wasn't possible. And if you try to provide them, then the parents go nuts. No, all the other girls have the phones right there. So yeah, so even amongst devotees, it can be. So there's so many, you know, pitfalls that you find, and you have to watch out for them. And so staying on the straight and narrow and being very serious, and you know, sometimes. I mean, we've all tasted, you know, various, chanting the holy name, how it can be so sweet and so, you know, so satisfying, whether japa or kirtan. And you read, you know, Rupa Goswami says, Tunde tanda manida timbatanate tundavali labde. When I chant, I want to have thousands of tongues to taste. I don't know how much nectar these two syllables Krishna had produced. Well, is that some kind of it was like a false advertisement or something? What has he got to gain? No, no, he's tasting it that way, right? So why can't we? because the mind is pulling us this way. We're not completely absorbed. We're not, So sometimes you get a little vision of that, a little taste of that, of absorption in the holy name. And then it's like, now I get a little understanding of what it's like. So that's why I said, kirtani sadhari, always chant. It's just like it's in the material world, material consciousness, right? The mode of passion. So you know that it's, you may get what you're desiring, whether it's something to eat or sex, whatever, maybe something to drink, and you aspire for it, and you may get it, but you know that it's going to be temporary. There's going to be a period where you can enjoy it, and all right, I know I'll get a hangover or whatever, come down again. But at least let me get that. That's all you know, right? So imagine you had a means of enjoying that, first of all, didn't end, and second of all, increased. Ever expanding. Anandam buddhivardhanam, padipadam purnamitasvaranam. That's third line, this Shikshastika. It's so seminal for our whole understanding. So he says, this Sankirtan, he's talking about Harinam Sankirtan, but it calls for absorption of the holy name, basically. And it's ever-increasing ocean of bliss, and at every step you can taste the nectar for which you're always anxious. So where is there any room for dissatisfaction to come in where you look for sense gratification? You see how that's like a complete, So, and it's not something that, only the Goswamis can experience. That's available to us if we follow. Prabhupada promised and he showed. And you can experience a little taste of that, and then the mind goes here or there, but it's possible. That's why these holidays are so important, and also pilgrimage. So, okay, I'm going to India for a month, I'm not going to do anything but hear and chant, and associate with this devotee and that devotee, and you come to another level. You can come to another platform where you can, and that's, the best preaching platform to be on. Because people sense, this person has something I don't have, he has peace, and that's why you're successful. Because you take one look at your blissful face and you say, what has he got? I'm not kidding. So that that's your life becomes successful in all ways if you really you can kick out some of the anarthas and progress in devotional service. Vijay, you're on.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind. Dandavat Pranam Prabhu. You know better than me that the material creation of the Lord is created with only one purpose, which is to help the conditioned living entities to go back home, back to Godhead. But in accordance with the text you chose for today, we see that only the mode of goodness is capable of giving such a help. So, based on this, my question is, how do you explain the presence of the material moods of ignorance and passion in the material creation of the Lord?
Well, I have to disagree with your premise, because it has a twofold reason for being. Yes, there is definitely the overriding desire of the Lord that we come back to Him, and therefore He keeps coming. You can see how inconvenient it is for Him to come down here. And all these demons, people criticizing Him. Just stay in Goloka because He's still there in Goloka. But so He comes in order to give Dharma and restart He's concerned because He loves us. But the material energy has this twofold purpose: to give the living entities a field in which they can try to enjoy and fulfill the material desires, as long as they remain so stubborn and they don't want to hear the truth, as when they come to the human form. So that's where the whole modes of passion and ignorance come in. Is that the living entities want that. They want to be able to forget Krishna. So He allows them. This is part of our independence. Otherwise, there's no meaning to this love. And it solves the mystery. How did we get here? Well, we didn't want to love Krishna. We were curious. I wanted to be Krishna. I wanted to be in control, the real Purusha. We didn't think, well, I'm going to have to become an insect or a worm and stool. No, I want to be, in control like Krishna. So you get the body of Brahma. And Hare Krishna, welcome. We're just finishing up a class. Yeah, but we'll get you. Please take darshan. If you like, you can offer a flame. Do we have enough there? Yeah. Are you sure? They keep walking in. There's like 12, 15 of them. Welcome. But yeah, Tyler will show you how to. Okay, we have. So, yes, why are these lower modes in so much suffering? Because that's part of the big lesson. Is that you?
No. You were saying that we get the body of Brahma.
Yeah, we get the body of Brahma, but even as Brahma, we're not. Our four-headed Brahma is going back to Godhead. He's the head of our sampradaya, but it isn't always the case. Even Lord Brahma can become bewildered, as he did even in Krishna Lila, and come down, not go back to Godhead, but get more and more entangled in the modes of nature. Otherwise, Prabhupada said in the purport, the first body you get when you leave the spiritual world is Brahma. So the idea is that you can only go back to the spiritual world if you're completely pure. So there always is a way of doing that. Although in Kali Yuga, and if you don't chant Hare Krishna, you're not going to make it. It's very dark. But it's temporary. It'll be Satya Yuga again after 427,000 years or so. And people will be in the mode of goodness, and everyone will be more or less a devotee. So, but the material world in itself has all of this spectrum of ability, where you can become demonic, you can become an enemy of God, you can do so many nefarious things, but eventually you'll suffer for that, and come and get a chance again eventually to become purified. So there's a twofold reason. One is to allow the non-devotees, the rebels, to try to enjoy and experience, how much suffering that is, and hopefully that they'll see the light when they come in touch with the devotee and the Shastra, and they'll say, yes, now I know why I'm suffering, now let me go, reform myself so that I'm eligible to go back to Godhead. But what we're experiencing, especially in Kali Yuga, is the vast majority of people are completely ignorant, and they're trying their varieties of enjoyment and more suffering on an individual and a collective level. So that twofold reason, if you research it, you'll see that that's the case. Okay?
Yes, Prabhu, better than okay, as to be expected. Outstanding answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bol.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.